Hey everyone, it's time for another starter, this time Burning Arrow. I also started streaming here on YouTube to prep for my temporary full-time content creation in November and December, and as a result, however, I was not always focused on getting the right recordings, and the first few minutes weren't recorded at all. At the end of the video I will give you a quick build overview, and this video covers the campaign. Let's first cover Burning Arrow, which is a very simple skill, as you would expect from a starter skill. This is a projectile bow attack that converts 100% of physical damage to fire damage and has a 25% chance to ignite enemies. It has 70% of base attack speed and at level 20, 420% added damage effectiveness. The wiki doesn't list any notable interactions, but what is worth mentioning if you played the skill before is that it was changed in the last patch. It no longer has added fire damage to attacks against ignited enemies at all gem levels, but it now has 280% effectiveness of base and added damage at level 1, previously that was only 200, scaling up to, like I mentioned, 420% at gem level 20, previously that was only 300%. The logical thing with the skill that ignites, and is called Burning Arrow, is to ignite monsters, so I'm going to play this as an on-hit skill, mostly ignoring the ignite part. For starters, I already found a 3-link and I put Burning Arrow, Volley and Mirage Archer in there. Here I am experimenting with Arrow Nova and I only just realized how this works. You shoot an arrow, it comes down and then it splits into 5 different arrows. That is not what I'm looking for. I drop a Sapphire Ring from Reveal and here you already see the damage of that 3-link combination. It's quite solid, I would say. I decided to replace a unique amulet I found earlier because I need some intelligence. I try out the Crown of Thorns for a lot of energy shields, but I dropped that later down the line. I keep dropping uniques because next is the Quill Rain, which I take off a Merc. I don't end up using it much though, I don't think it is good for Burning Arrow. Crateline drops a new bow, this is a decent upgrade. I experiment a bit with Pierce over here but decided to swap that back. I started Breach and you can see I incorporated Herald of Ash into the build. For Alira I take the 15% elemental resistances, which I just like a lot on the build, and I also get the Onslaught on Kill passive. It's great for leveling and progression. I get a new Topaz ring, that is an upgrade. I slam an Essence on a Ruby ring for some attributes. Mercenaries pose little issues to me and I primarily aim for their currency. And this is the start of Act 3 where you can see my 3-link of Mirage Archer, Volley and Burning Arrow, which does significant damage. I get a Chromatic Orb from a Merc, swap around some gems I may want to use later in my offhand bow, such as added fire support and LE damage with attacks. I get a bunch of currency from a well-guarded strongbox. I find my first 4-link with 3 greens and 1 blue, and I also equip pretty decent gloves. Here you see my damage on Gravicious, on whom I apply a sniper's mark. It's not great and it's not bad. Here is a glimpse of the passive tree. I'm just taking generically good attack and elemental and bow nodes around the starter area of the ranger. I decided to fill that 4th blue link with prismatic bursts, which are the little explosions that you see here on Dominus. It's not even bad, I just have no clue how to skill this. Ultimately, I want Trinity support, but I don't meet the requirements yet. Until a little bit later, because this bow with lightning damage is what I needed. The tooltip confirms that this must work, so I slot in Trinity. Another 4-link setup is Mana Forged Arrows, Frenzy, Culling Strike and Ensnaring Arrow. I know, it's a bit scuffed, but it'll get better. Trinity works, as you can tell, all the bars fill up nicely. Frenzy works, I get Frenzy charges, and I have Blood Rage too. This is pretty smooth sailing already in Act 4. I drop a new Mana Flask and a new Life Flask, decide to run a bit of the lab, and while Isaro is a bit of a challenge as I don't have that much health, he does go down. I get a Dusk Toe, which is quite nice, settle for a Lightning Arrow of Electrocution, who knows, may come in handy. Check the possible ascendancies, but opt in the end for Deadeye, taking Gathering Winds for a smooth leveling experience. Here is that Dusk Toe with 4 sockets, allowing me to set up another Mana Forged Arrow setup. I get Herald of Ice, to try that out for a bit, but ultimately drop that. I die to a Merc, and this is only my 2nd death in the campaign, and my last. Dying twice on a ranger in the campaign, that's not bad at all. I get another chest from a Merc. You can also see how much damage I do at this point, and here you see the average leveling experience. Just quite smooth and significant damage. Single target isn't amazing, but it's not bad either, and thanks to a good chunk of evasion, it is very cozy defensively speaking. I get a mark on hit sniper's mark setup, plus returning projectiles on my main skill and elemental damage with attack, stacks just to see how that feels instead of Trinity. It's pretty good, as you can tell. I replaced Volley by lesser multiple projectiles, I think that is personal preference though, and I removed Herald of Ice because I need the mana to pay for all those mana forged setups. Needless to say though, for a completely fresh SSF start as I reset the whole thing, this build is quite solid already. I get a granite flask, a new life flask, use a few alterations on the granite and equip it. I decide I want a new chest and the gambler provides, which is very nice. And here is the Kitava fight. I'm back to Trinity, as you can tell. I have some Gale Force stacks, 3 Frenzy charges from Mana Forged Arrows / Frenzy, and while a single target isn't amazing, it's definitely passable in my book. Kitava isn't an issue whatsoever and ultimately goes down, reducing my resistances by 30%. It's time to fix some of those resistances, so I take this heavy belt, use a Regal Orb, get lucky with the resist that I roll, and I craft another resist, and this is going to help out quite a bit. Other pieces get several bench crafts too. I reapply my auras, meaning Clarity, Herald of Ash and Precision, and it is time for the next half of the campaign. This is a great amulet. Good attributes, flat damage is quite nice. I also hit level 49 in the process. Here's a bit of a sample on Brutus 2.0 single target. I was very happy seeing this personally. I rearrange a bunch of gear, find an amazing amethyst ring with flat damage and strength, almost capping my resistances after I equip it and bringing Chaos Res close to 0. Soon after I drop another, actually capping elemental resistances, and again they don't stop appearing, yet another Chaos Res ring. I make a habit out of putting currency on white gear, especially weapons. This time I'm not too lucky, but fairly often these yield good results during the campaign. I get some new gloves and decided it's time to get a homie who also has a bow and shoots a bunch of lightning. Also her Wrath aura will come in handy. I drop a Le Hoop Vol, a very decent overall ring, but I need Chaos Res personally. Here is a bit of Arcali Spider footage, again including the fact there's a homie around, very decent damage even on a single target boss with 50% increased life. I get a Diamond Flask as a quest reward, just in case I end up going crit. Here is my new bow with a few whetstones on it as well. This is quite nice, I would say. It is time for a bit of crafting and swapping around, starting with these boots. I put just int over there, which is an attribute that I always seem to need in this build, and then some quality, sockets, color, and it's good to go. Elemental resistances still look good for now, so I craft some flat lightning damage on the amulet. I can now equip this amethyst ring, making my chaos resistance a positive value, and here is a new heavy belt too, fixing the elemental resistances I just broke. I craft some life on the remaining rings, elemental damage with attacks on the belt, and life on the quiver. That's pretty good. All in all, it's time to continue. I do the second lab and get far shot. I give my old bow to the homie and my helmet as well. Here is the damage on Doedry. I grab some amazing gloves from a merc, try to color them as I need 1 red and 1 blue, but I fail. There go all of my chromatic orbs. I decide to melt some celestial bodies. I must say, this damage is really starting to ramp up now that I have found a 4-link combination that I'm happy with and a decent bow and quiver. It is smooth, deadly, deadeye, fast, and I don't die much at all. This is not a squishy character, at least in the campaign. And looking at a bit of Aqueduct footage afterwards, I really like where this is going. Maybe the Ignite part does even more damage, I don't know. But I'm not complaining about on-hit Burning Arrow so far. I retried those gloves again and now I got it. This is huge. I drop a chest with a lot of evasion and triple elemental resistances, so it's time to get some slots, link them and equip this bad boy. Here is Doedry again, and this normally hurts, but thanks to Leech and defenses, I can just face tank it. I decide to get Arctic armor for the time being, as I no longer need clarity. It makes me freeze immune until I have the Pantheon. I do lab number 3, put quality on Sniper's Mark and get 2 additional projectiles. And then it is time for Kitava, where you can see I have 5 arrows, 2 from the passive skill and 2 from my ascendancy. The damage is decent, I think. I don't mind a bit less boss damage, as long as I don't die all the time on them, and that is not the case. Like I said, only 2 deaths in the entire campaign, that is quite an achievement I think. And that brings me to the build overview. Okay, lovely people, just like last time, welcome back into the actual game. This is the unscripted part, but I will go over this much faster than last time. I will provide the path of building, and first maybe to prove that I did indeed only die twice, Here, you've died 2 times and we made it to the end of the campaign. I want to start with the Ascendancy. I think you have seen this. So I started with Gathering Winds so that I get Gale Force and Tailwind. And Tailwind is action speed by 8%. It's pretty good. And then Far Shot for 30% more damage if it's far away. And 2 additional projectiles. And then the passive tree. I think most of the nodes here are just like generically good nodes. The only thing that I would like to highlight is this precise technique. 40% more attack damage if accuracy is higher than maximum life. And you never deal crits. But that crits part is fine. You just need to be mindful of your accuracy. So I have 3271 and I have 2900 life. So this thing is currently active for 40% more damage, which is clearly a lot of damage, right? Another piece of tech that I quite like is this Fire Mastery. The final node doesn't matter, but the Mastery is critical strikes do not inherently ignite, but you do 100% increased damage with hits against ignited enemies. And I am igniting most of my enemies, so this is 100% increased damage. In order to meet those accuracy requirements, I have also taken some accuracy nodes in this case. These nodes, they also provide a bit of resistances, which is quite nice. I take some elemental nodes as well, so hits have 15% chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistance values as inverted. This is quite strong. I take any life node that I have access to because I don't want to create like a super squishy character. Then here I get an additional arrow and here I also get an additional projectile, so that is 2 extra arrows. Here I get a little bit of mana cost reduction and mana reservation efficiency. I have another mana reservation efficiency wheel over here, which works quite well. And that is most of it, I would say. Here you penetrate some elemental resistances. Here I do some pierce, so I pierce just from my tree 3 additional targets, which I think is pretty good. And then leech, the instant leech. The mark tech right here, you always take this, I would say. So 20% and another 20% increased. And another 10%, right? So it's 50% increased damage against the marked target. That is super good. That's that, and then the other part remaining, I would argue, is only the gear. So you see my bow is pretty decent, right? Fire, lightning. The most important thing is that it is spread out correctly. So I do 488 to 10,000 fire damage and 300 to 7,000 lightning damage. So that means that sometimes my lightning damage is more than my fire damage, and that means that my Trinity support actually works. This is why this is important. The helmet, I think generically just decent items. I will scroll over them. I don't think there's anything like, too good about this, honestly. This chest you saw in the video, this you saw in the video, this as well. And here's my really, really good gloves. Then the skills, let's so quickly go over them. So I have Burning Arrow, which I currently have linked to elemental damage with attacks, to added cold damage, because I have a green gem and I suppose this is like decent at the very least. And then Trinity support. That is my main skill for now. I have 2 Mana Forged Arrows setups. Here I have Mana Forged Arrows linked to Frenzy. This provides me a Frenzy charge, a Mirage Archer, which will then trigger and keep shooting, and lesser multiple projectiles. You should probably put greater multiple projectiles in here, now that I think about it. And then Sniper's Mark with Mark on Hit. And life tap, so it doesn't cost mana, and also dash is linked to life tap, so also that doesn't cost mana. Here is another Mana Forged with ensnaring arrow. This makes enemies take more projectile damage. And culling strike, just in case, that I can call something. And then some auras over here. Currently, what am I running? Grace, Precision, and Herald of Ash. That's what I'm running. And I think that is the build, right? There's not much else to say. So guys, if you want, join the stream. I've started streaming here on YouTube. You're very much welcome to join, ask any questions you may have, see how the build is performing, that sort of thing. And with that being said, thanks so much for watching, making it to the end. I really appreciate all the content and the comments and the feedback that I'm getting on these. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you want. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys. So thanks for that. I love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.